Okay, good evening friends. Okay, so in the last class we talked about the third phase of a regional geography, regional approach, and next we are going to talk about the fourth phase of regional approach, which is the case of new regional geography. The new regional geography. So if you talk about this fourth phase, that is the new regional geography, context of development, because we saw that in the third phase there was decline of regional approach and regional geography, and what ultimately paved the way for their re-establishment. So context of development was basically in this period we do find that the period of 1960s was a turbulent period. In American and global history. And we find that there were a number of problems. There was environmental issue. Environmental problems were there to the fore. There were other problems like there was Cold War rivalry going on. There was unemployment and inequality. At rise, there were several other issues like for example, there was racial tensions between black and white in US. So many problems were there, and what we found that geography guided by quantitative revolution and systematic approach could not provide solutions to these problems. Okay, so again, because it was more concerned with, we are talking about context of development, and actually in context of development we can say that there were three factors which led to the development of new regional geography. And first factor we are talking about, that is 1960s, we find that this kind of situation existed and it could not provide any solutions to these problems of society. And ultimately there was as a reaction, which movement was on the rise? We have studied about this. There was a movement which okay, welcome back. There was some, I think, connection was lost. Am I visible now? Okay. So if you talk about social relevance movement, it provided a critique to quantitative revolution, and the primary objective was that geography should become applied. Geography should become an applied discipline. For such conversion of geography, it was visualized that, or it was advocated that regional approach is more suitable by several scholars. Like for example, one geographer, if I talk about, I'll give one example. Later also we will talk about this person, and this person was none other than Smith. We will see Smith was the main developer of the welfare geography. So Smith found that every region has its own unique features and problems. And thus, what was the case of regional geography? Thus, he found that areal differentiation approach based on more meaningful criteria like poverty, unemployment, etc. was more suitable for development of geography. Was more suitable for the development of geography. So first समझ में आ गया, What was the first motivation which led to the re-establishment of the regional approach? I have already talked about before also that quantitative revolution was like building pipe dreams. It was like you just bring one, it was more a kind of top-down approach. So suppose there is a problem, suppose I have to solve the city problem. So what I will do, I will try to apply the concentric zone model of Burgess or the sectoral model, etc., and I will try to plan city according to that. But it is not always necessary that city can be the management of the city, the planning of the city can be done, because each and every city has its own history. Like for example, we'll later see that in the European cities, in the Western cities, we find that there is one center always. There has been one center, because historically there has been continuity in their case. So central part of the city, usko hum bolte hain CBD, Central Business District. So these cities tend to have one CBD. But when it comes to the developing countries, like for example, take the case of India, who have varied history, you'll be finding that rather than one CBD, you will be finding there is presence of two CBD. And these two CBDs were established during different period. Like for example, the older CBD is of the medieval period, when there was medieval period rulers, and a new CBD was built when Britishers came and established the city on modern forms. Okay, so ultimately, very clearly, different type of planning approach may be required in such a area, and which might not be very same as what was being done in the Western world. Okay. So quantitative revolution ideas were like, they were more concerned with less with ground realities, and they were more theoretical. So if it is happening on paper, then it is happening like that. So it was found that different areas can have different type of problems, therefore the solutions should be different. Another example ek deta hu. You talk about Uttarakhand. So Uttarakhand is a fragile zone. It is part of the Himalayas. Himalayas are very fragile zone. And if you talk about Uttarakhand, has several type of problems of hazard, problems of unemployment, poverty, etc. So many problems are there in Uttarakhand. Now, what I do, if I apply this model, if I apply just, there is a theory of development and this theory of development, for example, says that there should be increasing industrialization, etc., then development would follow. With development, people will have more money and thus will have more capacity to ultimately deal with the risk and hazards. Okay. If I apply this same model without looking into the actual reality of the region, what will happen? It would come out to be more disastrous, and this is what has happened in Uttarakhand. See, so many problems are arising in Uttarakhand right now. There are more floods, there are more landslides, so many more issues have emerged. The intensity of floods, landslides has actually increased in Uttarakhand. More forest fires are taking place. And what is the basic reason for that? This type of model of development. So for example, we tried to apply the tourism model, but the tourism model which was applied, it was more based on resort type of tourism. And what has happened? So much resort type tourism, so much change in the, if you talk about roads, etc., cutting of the slopes, and so much dams, etc. This has led to what? This has led to more catastrophes. So this was basically the idea which was put forward by the social relevance school of thought, and they ultimately believed that regional approach was more suitable. बाद में देखेंगे, Smith clearly talked about areal differentiation, but he was very clear that the areal differentiation, old type of areal differentiation, was very static. It was based upon the criteria which were very static criteria like physiography, etc., etc. So more physical criteria. Thus, what was the need to change in this type of areal differentiation? It should become more based on criteria which was relevant for the society. So you areally differentiate, you use that areal differentiation approach, that is the partial areal differentiation more specifically, and base it on more meaningful criteria which can help and solve the problems of society. Okay? So that was the first motivational aspect which led to the re-rise of DM Smith. It is. अभी वो आएगा welfare geography when we'll talk about he'll come. Okay. So that is one. Second, if you talk about, very important feature was the rise of humanistic and behavioral approaches. Rise of humanistic and behavioral approaches. So, if you talk about rise of humanistic and behavioral approaches, we know very well that the QR, what it did, QR ultimately dehumanized geography. There was dehumanization of geography owing to QR. So, याद है हमने बात किया था कि how all the theories of quantitative evolution, they assumed about human economic rational, human being economically rational. No, we can definitely say no human being in this world can be fully economically rational. Reason? We don't have all the information, we don't have ability to process all the information. At best we can be boundedly rational, but we are not fully rational. So again, it converted all human beings into one type of human beings, and variety is the essence of humanism. Every person has his own behavior, and that is why it was opined that this is the reason why the theories are not so much useful in solving the problems of the society. ठीक है? So critics put forward the idea that behavior of each individual as well as societies are different. Thus, general approach to solve their problems would not work. ठीक है? Would not work. So if I just give you one example, like suppose there are number of type of people in India, like for example, there are pseudo seculars, famous pseudo seculars हैं. So pseudo seculars को if I have to explain something, I will have to explain them lots of logically that this, suppose this policy, if I have to suppose get their assent with respect to any program or policy, so I'll have to give them logics कि urban naxals हैं and pseudo seculars को you have to give them logics कि this policy is going to work like this, that. Okay, so maybe then they will be convinced. So I will have to use a unique approach for them. On the other hand, there is different group of people like bhakts. So if I have to convince them bhakts, अगर मैं उनको कितना भी logic दूँ, they will not understand. But if I give them logic, like there is nationalism, देशभक्ति, or other type of logics, if I try to give them, like Hinduism का logic दे दूँ, so whether it is unrelated or related or unrelated, again probably they will agree with all the things. Pakistan ka logic always works, with them. So again, different people, different behavior and different approaches. So that is what they were talking about. This was the basic idea of the behavioralists and the humanists, because each person would be what? Yes, then Naman is correct. If I explain it like this, maybe I'll get a chance to go to Rajya Sabha TV and all those kind of things. Republic TV to जरूर बुलाएगा. Okay. Yes, cow logic. Correct. That is another one. So basically, what will happen? Each person has his own behavior, which is conditioned by his own historical experiences, and everyone's history is different. Like for example, you take the case of many Muslim countries, we'll see. So if you look into the Muslim countries, we will be finding that the fertility rates in their countries are high. And again, if you have to understand why the fertility rates are high, you'll have to go to their religion. Not only if you just look into the development aspect, it would not work. Development aspect might work in case of the Western world. In their case, you'll have to look into the religion, the religious aspect. For example, their religion is very much, if you talk about guided, they are guided by religion. The religion talks about that you have to increase population. The influence of religious institutions is still very strong in them. And as a result, you will be finding that there the birth rates are high, fertility rates are high. The status of women is another example, where in Muslim world the status of women is quite low. Okay? So again, I will have to look into their own basic factors which are influencing their line of thought. Okay? In fact, you can understand, like I'll just give you one example. Most of the scriptures you'll find, like whether you talk about Bible, whether you talk about Gita, or whether you talk about or Vedas or several books or Quran, etc., etc. In most of them, you will be finding that they are using lots of stories. जैसे अपना महाभारत हो गया, रामायण हो गया. All these are basically stories. So why they are talking about these stories? Actually, original thinkers, what they wanted, they understood very well that they had to explain people number of things. But at that time, the logical thinking among the general population was limited, because people were more engaged in their day-to-day work and they had less time to ultimately think logically, and all those, that kind of logic, that kind of freedom, things didn't existed at that time. So basically, one way to explain them was taking analogies, explaining through stories, like I many times do in the class. So again, as a result of which, what happened? Those scriptures were written mainly to explain people in their own way. It is unfortunate कि वो बाद में later people came and they said कि नहीं, there was this Ram or there is that thing and we created a fuss out of that. ठीक है? So again, most of these things were there to explain, to catch imaginations of people and explain the logic behind that. हम जब स्कूल में थे तो you must have read those moral science, एक हमारा subject हुआ करता था. So there used to be lots of stories, and at the end of all these stories there was some meaningful statement, some meaningful idea which was tried to be given to the people. So that is what they were talking about, that these behaviorists and humanists, that every person has a different way of thinking and you will have to explain it in that person's way. Like एक और example देता हूँ. See, many times we talk about, like I have seen so many people, so much very intelligent friends, but unfortunately they're talking about very, they don't understand actually the society, how it works. So many times you'll find people that they complaining about reservation, etc., etc. Like why to give reservation to scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, so much things. they would be talking about. If I just take an example of scheduled tribe, culture in the scheduled tribes is totally different from what is the culture that we in urban areas etc. experience. Okay, their way of learning is totally different, and you will not believe, I have met with so many students who belong to those areas. I used to go, I've gone to Northeast to teach, I have gone to Chhattisgarh so many times to teach, and ultimately I found that if I explain to the students in conventional way, there was like nobody could understand the conventional way. So suppose if I am talking about a river and I am talking about meandering of the river and बताया कि देखो इधर से erosion हो रहा है, इधर deposition हो रहा है, तो shifting course of the river, he will not understand. So class में फिर मैंने उसको समझाया कि तो just imagine that there is exam and ultimately you are living at a place where all people know you, so many people know you, and suppose you have to go out and buy milk, but you don't want that people catch you and waste your time. So what you will do, you will like bach ke nikal ke आओगे. So something like that, they ultimately understood what is meandering in the upper reaches of the river. So that is what it is. If you teach them mathematics the way it is taught in our schools, there is 99% surety they will fail. They wouldn't enjoy the process because their society has been built in a different manner. Okay, so that is basically the crux of behavioralism and humanism. Okay, I hope you understood. So if I talk about this, general approach to solve their problems would not work. So they were for use of which type of approach? Tell me which type of approach would be suitable. General approach here is the nomothetic. So can I say they would argue for ideographic approach? Yes or no? They would clearly argue for ideographic approach, and ideographic approach is what? It is study of unique features. So tell me, can I say this same ideographic approach, this same philosophy is the base of regional approach, is the base of regional approach. ठीक है, definitely what will happen? Thus it fostered the development of regional approach in geography or new regional geography. So this is the second motivation which was there. Third motivation, if you talk about, came from the rise of structural approach. Rise of the structural approach. So what was this structural approach? If I have to just explain you the structural approach says that there is at the top what is superstructure, but below that lies infrastructure. In fact, even below that there is a deep structure. So superstructure is what? It is the visible, and these two are the invisible factors. So what we essentially find many times, that most of the time in fact, that the causes, what we see is only the effect. Okay, and the cause of that phenomena lies where? in the invisible domain. ठीक है, so this was basically the structural approach. So you see, एक छोटा सा example देता हूँ, you'll understand this. Today, can you see the case of government schools? What is the situation of government schools in India? Are they working very well? Situation is very bad. If you look into the government school, although we have our Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, etc., but the situation is actually very bad. The quality of education is very, very poor. Now, if I actually look into, if I just go back little bit, few decades back, and not even few decades back, if I just talk to my father in English, he would be able to talk with me in a very fluent English. His mathematics was superb. Superb, his mathematics was. And I was also used to be good in mathematics, and really it was teachings of my father which ultimately made my mind like thinking mind. Now I wonder that my father also studied in a government school. So many of his friends also I have seen, they were all very good in English and many other subjects. All of them studied in government school, but their situation, their quality of education is much better than what we are getting today. Okay? So see, two different eras, two different periods, and two different type of superstructure. Okay? Now, if I try to find the reason only in the superstructure, tell me, can I say that it would be difficult actually. I can say that, okay, this school is not working, this government is not working well, they are not doing well for this, that. This can be said, okay. But if this government is not working or that government is working like this, then why almost all over India this is the situation? Are all governments not working? Are there no other people who are like ultimately caring for the students? Everyone has become corrupt. Very difficult to understand if I just look at the superstructure. But if I look into the infrastructure, I'll find my reasons. Infrastructure is basically what? It is the political economic structure which is there. Our policy of development. So, before our policy of development used to be more guided by state. Nehru-Mann-Lobis model, you must have read about that. So, in Nehru-Mann-Lobis model, it was the state which was the main agent of change, who was to bring the change. And thus, all these institutions, which were particularly the state-oriented institutions, they were tried to make sure that they were very efficient. But after that, what happened? After 1991, in fact, in 85 onwards only we started, but 1991 more specifically, we adopted the LPG policy. And in this LPG policy, first thing we did was the commercialization of education, which occurred before also they were there, but after 1991, it was more privatization of education which occurred. And if you look into the situation, it has been like what systematically those government schools have been dismantled to make sure that the private education or the private schools, the private universities, they continue to benefit from this. You see, abhi UPSC mein dekh lo. If I just go back few years in UPSC, if I just go back to 2005, how many years? Hardly 15 years. You will be finding that there used to be good amount of selections taking place from Hindi medium. There used to be good amount of selection, particularly in top also there used to be several Hindi medium students used to be there. But just in a matter of 15 years, what has happened? You'll not find hardly, if you find someone in top 100 from Hindi medium, it would be like, oh, kitna bada. And top 50 mein to there is no one from many years now. So what actually changed? Have their intellectual capacities actually reduced? I don't think so. I have taught in Hindi and I know many students who are very good in their subject matter. So what actually changed? The change was that ultimately there is a kind of paper they frame, the kind of way they want, which prefers more English oriented, a more convent school type oriented student. He would excel more in the examination. And if you go into the details of this, ultimately you see today what is happening. Most of the people, they want their students to study in English medium and not in Hindi medium or any regional, if we talk about medium. So what it is doing, it is again shifting people from there to again those private. Whoever can afford, he is trying to at least make sure that his child studies in such some good English medium school. Okay, so again we find that where the reason is lying, the reason is lying in the structure. We might not be able to see that, okay, but it is happening. So this type of approach, structural approach, rose during this period. We'll see that the radical approach, जिसको हम बोलते हैं, जिसको I was talking about again and again, radical approach. Radical approach was essentially a structural approach. Structural approach is a bigger. So radical was sub part of structural approach. Okay. So this type of structural approach rose. And see, very important phenomena that occurred in the period of 1970s was the rise of globalization. With rise of globalization, there arose a thought, and this thought was that because of globalization with time, the phenomena all over the world would become uniform. Everywhere it would become uniform. You know, Western culture was growing and Western culture would penetrate all of the areas, and thus what will happen, there would be more homogeneity across the world. And if there is homogeneity across the world, then what will happen? There would be no need for such idiographic approaches like the regional approach. They would become redundant. Okay? Because if everyone is behaving in the same manner, like for example, if we all become materialistic, we adopt the materialistic philosophy from the West, then what is essentially the need to study many other type of behavior? You just think that people are economically rational and you accordingly do study them and solve their problems. Okay? And here came the critique of the structural approach, and structural approach criticized this type of idea. And structural approach says that even if suppose same process is adopted by an area, each region has its own structure, environmental structure, political structure, economic structure, cultural structure, psychological structure. So each of these areas have their own type of structure. So this same would be ultimately what? It would be adopted in a different manner. Although it would have very much similarities, but there would be huge amount of differences as well. Okay? There would be huge amount of differences. I'll give you one simple example of this. If you come to Delhi, I think अभी इंडिया में कई जगह पे पहुंच गया होगा. On various street corners, you will find one very unique food item and others also shops. And this is fried momos. खाया है? Fried momos, how many of you have eaten? It is tasty. So, you take the case of fried momos. It came from China. It is essentially a Chinese food. And one of the aspect of it is that it is comparatively, although उसमें भी बहुत सारी problems हैं, but it has less oil, etc., etc. So that was one of the early attractions of momo for many people, many fat people like me, कि momo it is boiled item खाते हैं, and better than our samosa, which is too much fried and too much carbohydrates are there in that. So that was like a kind of attraction. But what we did, we Indianized momos, and today again it has become another form of samosa. So that is basically what here the structural approach was talking about, that every region has its own philosophy, it has its own structure. So even if it is applied, same idea is applied, what will happen? It would not yield the same result. There might be some similarities, but the results would be what? They would be different. ठीक है? So that is basically what was the idea of structural approach. So I'll just talk about this. So period of 1970s, yes, every region adopts the phenomena uniquely. They have their own way of adopting the phenomena. So 90s saw rise of globalization. With globalization, rose an idea that with time forces of globalization would lead to homogenization of the world. Homogenization of the world. Thus, in future, there would be no need for ideographic approaches. No need for ideographic approaches like regional approach, as every part of the world would have similar characteristics and problems. This idea was criticized by the structural approach. According to them, every region has its own unique structure, Thus, adoption of the same phenomena would be done uniquely, yielding different result every time, yielding a different result every time. ठीक है, thus और एक लाइन और लिख लेते हैं फिर, even if they look similar, there would be lots of differences. There would be lots of differences. Thus, there would always be requirement of regional approach to understand and solve the problems of the society. ठीक है, समझ में आ गया? So this was basically the context. These were the motivations which led to again re-emergence of the regional approach in geography. So these developments देखो फिर से आ गया सुरजीत. He is asking, can we say ideographic approach is inductive method? How can you say that? Didn't I very specifically, clearly stated that inductive method is associated with scientific method, systematic method. Inductive method is used to formulate general laws and theories. Yes or no? It can become, if you have lots of generalizations, like what Ritter was trying to do, what Hettner was talking about, but वो ideals थे, उनको छोड़ दो, otherwise there would be lots of confusion in your mind. ठीक है, so these developments ultimately led to re-emergence of regional approach in geography as new regional geography. As new regional geography. ठीक है? So this is how there was rise of new regional geography. Now, if we talk about, let us say एक क्वेश्चन बनाते हैं एंड लेट अस ट्राई टू सॉल्व दैट. न्यू regional geography differed from the traditional regional approach. Elaborate. 150 words. You have got 3 minutes to frame your answer. You have 3 minutes to ultimately frame your answer. Yes, in this new regional geography का मतलब approach है. Just it is the name which was used, so we are using as the name was given. Okay. So here we can start with our introduction, and very short introduction. I can say the regional approach of the 1970s and onward differed from traditional regional approaches in So सीधा straightforward. Then coming to the main body. So there were many differences in them. Criteria of difference. This is traditional regional approach and new regional geography. न्यू रीजनल ज्योग्राफी. सो क्या क्या डिफरेंसेस हो सकते हैं? हाउ दे हैव बीन डिफरेंट? नंबर ऑफ वेज. One important difference was the objective. So traditional regional approach objective was to understand the unique characteristics of the region. Unique characteristics of the region. While new regional geography was essentially what? The objective is to understand and apply the unique characteristics of the region. That means it is more applied in the sense. ठीक है. So that is one very important aspect which is there. Then another was with respect to the methodology. So the traditional regional approach methodology was very rigid and more. Which type of methodology they were using? More philosophical methodology. Philosophical. On the other hand, the new regional geography is a kind of synthesis. It is, you can say that it is more flexible with respect to methodology. It also uses scientific techniques including quantifications to understand and solve problems of regions. So if you talk about methodology wise, they have been different. Then criteria for regionalization. So traditional, we have already seen, it was very rigid with respect to the number and sequence of criteria chosen. On the other hand, new regional approach is what? अभी आऊँगा मैं, दर्पण, wait for this, I will come back to what you are asking. So this is one thing. Then if you talk about criteria for regionalization, in new regional geography, what is the case? New regional geography is what we call it as problem oriented approach, या फिर इसको एक वर्ड हम यूज करते हैं, कंटिंजेंट approach. So here criteria chosen with respect to problem in hand. Problem in hand. If you talk about here modernization, so traditional regional geography, regional approach was more traditional and did not include the modern influences on particular area as a part of study. If you talk about new regional geography, it is synthesis between traditional and modern. So कहने का मतलब है कि suppose if a traditional regional geographer is there and he wants to solve a problem of a particular area, so his solutions would be more always what, more traditional type of solutions he would always provide. On the other hand, if it is a new regional geographer, what he would do, he would also combine modern methods along with the traditional methods. Okay? So for example, we'll see later on that rather than just suppose you are talking about agricultural problems of a particular area. Okay? Suppose we are talking about agricultural problems of a particular area, and we are talking about increasing the productivity, and today we see that there is number of areas where the productivity of the soil is declining because huge amount of nutrients are being extracted from the soil owing to the philosophies of green revolution. So what he would say, the traditional approach geographer, he would say that ultimately the only solution is that you go for traditional approaches, like you use basically organic manure, you leave the field for fallow for a period of time so that the field would be able to regain its qualities, its characteristics, its nutrients. Okay? So this would be the approach which would be used by a traditional regional geographer. He would look into what is the case, what has been the tradition of the area. On the other hand, a new regional geographer would not only use the traditional methods but it would also combine it with modern methods. So बाद में हम agriculture में देखेंगे technique referred to as integrated nutrient management. Integrated nutrient management. So what is integrated nutrient management? In this, we want to optimize the production system. ठीक है, optimization of the production system so that the efficiency continues to increase even in future. It continuously increases, it doesn't stagnates. And in this, the nutrients, when we are talking about management of nutrients, we use both traditional methods, variety of type of traditional methods, we combine them with modern methods. So if required, you use fertilizers. If required, you use chemical fertilizers, but use them in a more appropriate way. Maintain the NPK ratio. Use precision farming to apply fertilizers. Do you understand what I am saying? This point of modernization. Then if you talk about focus, the focus of traditional geography was, regional geography was to identify the unique, or I can say local characteristics of a region. But new regional geography, it tries to identify and explain, यहाँ पर and describe लिख लो, and explain the unique as well as general. So unique का एक alternative term हो सकता है local, that we used, and general का एक word हो सकता है global. ठीक है, global characteristics of a region. कहने का मतलब है their focus is on what? Their focus is on local, while their focus is on global. Global is a term which we use as a combination of globalization and local, global and local. Then place of humans, place of the human beings. And if you talk about the place of human beings, in the traditional regional approach, generally neglected. Generally neglected. So what was the case? We'll find that traditional regional approach was based on the idea of landscape. It emerged actually from Germany, and in Germany this landscape geography was very most popular approach of regional geography. So actually what was the case of this landscape? Landscape का मतलब होता है कि suppose I stand at a vantage point. ठीक है, I am standing here at a vantage point. So all the things which I see up to where my vision goes, this is basically what? This is the landscape view. Landscape view. ठीक है, and from here comes that idea of landscape. जो भी दिखाई पड़ रहा है, that is landscape. But tell me, in this landscape, can you observe one thing in this landscape? Where is the observer? Where is the observer in the landscape? Is he inside the landscape or outside the landscape? He is very clearly outside the landscape. ठीक है? Thus, in case of landscape, in this idea of landscape, will this idea be able to incorporate humanism, feelings of people, subjectivity associated with people? Will it be able to incorporate? No. And this was one of the basic reasons why the traditional regional approach remained more mechanistic. So, traditional regional geography was based on the idea of landscape, which was a very mechanistic concept. In new regional geography, is human is considered at the center of the region. ठीक है? It is considered as being located at the center of the region. So that is one difference that you find. Here, method of regionalization. In method of regionalization, it was what? It was more top-down method. Method whereby criteria chosen without consultation with people and applied to demarcate boundaries of the region. Applied to demarcate boundaries of the region. On the other hand, if you talk about in case of new regional geography, we are saying human beings are the center. So it is what? It is a more bottom up approach or bottom up method, whereby the boundaries, ये पहले criteria लिखो, criteria and boundaries are identified in consultation with people. So this is another difference. Another difference is with respect to political associations. Political association. So traditional regional geography was politically neutral. It was politically neutral. Why it was politically neutral? Because it believed that the main role of geographers is to highlight the problem, highlight the characteristics of this area. Policy making is not the task of geographer. ठीक है? So it was politically neutral. So it believed that policy making is outside the domain of geographers. But what is the case of new regional geography? It is politically active. It understands that the political characteristics cannot be isolated from other characteristics like economic, cultural, environmental, etc. etc. ठीक है. So these are the basic differences between the new regional geography and the traditional regional approach. So it doesn't has problem with associating in policy making in politics. Politics is what? It is policy making, because it understands that politics you cannot separate. India में देखो, how can you separate politics from economics? ठीक है, how can you separate politics from economics? I don't understand what you are asking, Yogesh. What is unique characteristic in NRG objective point? To understand and apply the unique characteristic. Objective उसका था कि केवल define करना, unique characteristic other का है application. Okay. ठीक है. So that is basically the difference between the new regional approach and the traditional regional approach. Now this is basically all about regional approach. And one example of which can be asked as a short note, although it didn't develop as a part of geography, but in recent times there has been so many magazines, geographical magazines, including your magazines like Geography and You, etc., have given their some articles on this, and this is basically the idea of bioregionalism. Bioregionalism. ठीक है. And I would go on to say that bioregionalism is an example of what? It is an example of your new regional approach, how regionalization is done. So what is essentially bioregionalism? So let us see, थोड़ा सा इसके बारे में देख लेते हैं. So when we talk about bioregionalism, first of all, the term was coined by Alan van Nieuwkerk, and he belonged to Canada, and it was done in 1970s. ठीक है, bioregionalism. And for him, if you talk about what was bioregionalism, it referred to regional models of new and relatively and relatively non-arbitrary scale. Scales of human activity in relation to the biological realities of the natural landscape. Ellen van Nieuwkerk. ठीक है. So for him it is what? It is a new form of regional model in which there are relatively non-arbitrary scales of human activity in relation to biological realities of natural landscape. So basically what it is trying to say is, here the focus is on understanding that how human beings are connected with their environment. ठीक है. How they have grown, their cultures etc. have grown from the environment. How they ultimately focus on, or how their cultures reflect the needs or the biological needs of the area. ठीक है. याद है मैंने एक एग्जाम्पल दिया था तुम लोगों को. डू यू रिमेंबर दैट एग्जाम्पल ऑफ दैट कबाड़ी एग्जाम्पल? And I talked about that if you talk to your if you go in many of the villages and many traditional people homes, they would not look very neat and clean. And what they would do, they would have a habit of preserving many of the things. They would not throw. They don't have that culture of use and throw culture जो हमने adopt कर लिया है. ठीक है. And can you understand that culture in India how developed? Culture of preserving things, not throwing things. It developed from the ground reality, from the environment, from the biological realities of the landscape. It is basically the culture of conservation and recycling. And why? Because if you talk about when it comes to the population resource ratio, although India is huge and so many things are there, resources are there, but we know that the population is concentrated in India even in few pockets, some river valleys etc. So here it was always the population pressure which was very very important factor which led to the development of such recycling culture. ठीक है. Reuse culture. So that is basically what Ellen van Nieuwkerk is trying to talk about here. So he further, in fact, the concept was further developed. It was further developed by Berg and Dasman. All these people are not geographers. So originally this concept was not developed in geography. So they, according to them, bioregion was basically what? It referred to the geographical terrain and terrain of consciousness. consciousness to a place and the ideas that have developed about how to live in that place. How to live in that place. Okay. So according to them, the way to delineate a bioregion was to study climatology, physiography, animal and plant geography, natural history, and other descriptive sciences and other descriptive natural and social sciences of the area. It is best described and its boundaries delineated by the people who are the residents of the region. Okay. So that is basically what is a bioregion. So bioregion का एक simple सा example if I talk about, which we are very frequently using today, can you think of an example of bioregion? Today we use lots in planning, and this is a watershed. Watershed is a very good example of a bioregion. Okay. So here when we are planning, what we do, we identify various watersheds, and we later see in watershed management, what we do in watershed management, we ultimately apply the principles of bottom-up approach. That means here people become the center of the project, of the planning. It is very consultative type of approach. You consult to people, what are their needs, they would define their roles, etc., everything, and ultimately then the planning and management is done on the basis of that. Okay. So this is basically the conception of bioregions. So maybe एक short note आ सकता था उस पे, so that is why I just took, so that you know what is basically bioregion. You can understand how much this concept is today useful. Utility of bioregion, can I say today we in the era of environmentalism, can I say these such type of concepts are very, very useful? Yes or no? We have to conserve the environment, we have to protect the environment. So which type of planning region would be more suitable? A political region or a watershed? Which maybe with that we will be able to solve many of the problems, environmental problems we are facing. Definitely it is going to be the watershed. Okay? So that is basically what is the conception of bioregion in the increasing problems related with global warming, etc. Again, this bioregionalism and the concept of watershed bioregions is going to be very, very useful in solving many of the problems. Okay? And that from here comes this conception of bioregion. So this is basically what is your regional approach. ठीक है, एक क्वेश्चन करते हैं and it is examine, yes, they are naturally existing always. Examine the utility of regional approach. Utility of regional approach. Yogesh is asking what are similarities between traditional regional geography and new regional geography. खुद से बनाओ, हर चीज चम्मच से खिलाया नहीं जा सकता. So I'll give you 2 minutes. Think what you'll be writing. Suppose if you were to face this question, examine the utility of regional approach or significance of regional approach. This word can also be replaced by significance. Yes, Pranav, they can be given. Soil, terrain characteristics can also be given as an example of bioregionalism. It includes all the biotic, means here bio word means environment. Okay, so the thing is, you can write about so many things, significance or utility of regional approach. If you just know the syllabus topics, you will be able to write so many things about them. So for example, but here very important thing was most of the people will forget to write about they will all write about the practical utility. Practical utility. But very few people will write about the academic utility. When we are talking about geography, can I say that we should also think about the academic utility of regional approach? So if I start with the academic utility of regional approach, tell me, have we seen that regional approach, it is an approach which promises to provide synthesis in geography? Yes or no? Provide synthesis in geography. Here when we are talking about, are we studying physical and human geography together? Yes, we are studying physical and human geography together. When we are studying it, are we focusing upon, can we use here regional approach where, like for example, if you talk about the principles of chorology, here ultimately the laws and models etc. are also utilized. Okay. So there is what? There is a very significant academic utility related with the regional approach. It promises that, or it is very promising that in future we maybe will be able to achieve that synthesis. One of you asked that is it inductive approach? If we study all the regions of the world properly and we are able to find several common patterns, can we say that maybe in future we will be able to devise some general laws with respect to geography? So it has even potential to reach to synthesis even in terms of method. So much is the promising nature of regional approach. Okay? But most importantly, that this synthetic nature of regional approach, what it does, it helps in avoiding conflicts and dichotomies in geography. And thus what it does, it has helped in saving the status of geography as a unified discipline. ठीक है, बात समझ में आ गई? So don't forget to write about the academic utility. Now when it comes to the practical utility, you can keep on going and you maybe will not stop. So tell me, can I say when we are talking about practical utility has practical utility with respect to, if I start with like physical factors like dealing with environmental problems like pollution, climate change. So many examples दे सकते हैं हम इसके. Like for example, tell me, today we find that in India, the impact of climate change on the monsoon is different. So in some areas it has led to increase in precipitation. In some areas it has led to decline in precipitation. For example, in northeast India it has led to decline in precipitation, while in central India we will see that it has led to increase in precipitation. So tell me, can I say that would we require different strategy for central India and different strategy for northeast India? Tell me yes or no. Answer is obviously yes. It also is very useful in development planning. In development planning, tell me, for example, if I talk about agricultural planning, will it be useful? Obviously yes. Like for example, see, today you see that there is lots of farmer suicide taking place in India, and one of the reasons for this farmer suicide is that what we have done, we have used the same model of development everywhere, and this model of development was green revolution model. Green revolution model is very famously referred to as package technology. Okay, so I'll explain you later that till it is not only about buying the HYV seeds, high yielding variety seeds. You need to have water, you need to have fertilizer, you need to have pesticides, everything you should have. Machines, etc. should be there. If all these things are not there, then most probably it is going to fail. Also, if you production suppose achieve bhi kar liya, so you need your mandis to sell, etc., etc. You know, so much fuss is now going on because of the agricultural reforms or the changes which are being introduced by the government. So agricultural planning. So tell me, suppose there is a humid area or an area which has already developed network of irrigation system like Punjab and Haryana. Can I say green revolution definitely will work there, but if I try to apply the same green revolution in Uttarakhand, will it work? Or if you talk about if I apply the same green revolution method in the Rajasthan region, it is very difficult that it would be working. It would create more number of problems. Okay, so again very utilizable in agricultural planning. For example, in India we have devised agro-climatic and agro-ecological regions for this agricultural planning. Okay, so again it is there. Similarly, if you talk about industrial planning, you see that in the world also, but more specifically in India, we find that there is regional imbalances are increasing. Some areas are becoming very rich, some areas are becoming very poor. When we will talk about population geography, we will see that in recent times, some states have become out migrating states very, very clearly. Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, so many states have become out migrating states, while several other states have become in migrating states like Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, so many of them, Gujarat, have become in migrating states. So very clearly what is happening, there is a imbalanced regional development is ultimately growing. Now tell me, will it be very, very useful? Will regional approach can be useful to solve these problems? Yes. Why these problems are there? Because we are using just one method based upon the manufacturing industries to develop. Can I say for different area, depending upon the resource base of the area, can we promote different type of industries, different type of methods? What is the reason why Bihar today, which is so much rich in resources, particularly soil, water, etc., it is so much poor region it has become. Why? Because again we are using the same method, that is essentially we are trying to use the development method based upon the industries which are more core industries, heavier industries, manufacturing industries. This type of models we are trying to use. Okay, so again there are problems. If you suppose talk about टूरिज्म इंडस्ट्री फॉर एग्जाम्पल, एक एग्जाम्पल दिया था मैंने टूरिज्म इंडस्ट्री का. सो उत्तराखंड वाला एग्जाम्पल, टेल मी विच टाइप ऑफ टूरिज्म इज बेटर फॉर उत्तराखंड, वेदर इट इज होम स्टे टाइप ऑफ टूरिज्म और रिसोर्ट टाइप ऑफ टूरिज्म. होम स्टे इज a sub approach of ecotourism. So homestay tourism is more suitable for development in Uttarakhand. So depending upon the need of the area, we can definitely go for what? Different type of industrial planning. Other forms of planning can be there, like planning can be cultural developmental planning, like planning for tribal areas, area planning. So tribal areas have their own need, and thus what will happen will be solving the problems with respect to that. So again, there is lots of utility. Or I can talk about urban planning. So Delhi NCR, again example of NCR is basically what? It is an example of a planning region. Again the regional approach is coming here. ठीक है. Others like population planning. So some areas we can identify the carrying capacity of a particular area, and accordingly we can plan the population of that area. If there is excess population, population can be made to ultimately, we can use several incentives, disincentives to make sure that population shifts to other areas where there is which are underpopulated and where there is capacity to absorb more number of people. Okay, so again it can be, this method can be used in population planning as well. Okay, so regional approach is essentially what? It is no doubt a problem solving approach. Okay, so when you are talking about utility of the regional approach, that is basically the utility of regional approach. Problems वो सारे जो हमने स्टार्टिंग से चारों उसके phases के problems बताएं, that is the main problem. Today if you talk about what is the main problem of regional approach, not much. It has become very exactly what we wanted. It is more like a problem solving approach, but the tendency of the regional approach still remains the same, that sometimes it tends to become more encyclopedic, tends to give more significance, too much significance to the uniqueness. Okay, but again this is something which is more individualistic and it depends upon the scholar who is studying the regions. So that is basically the regional approach. Now a related topic with this is regional synthesis, although it is not exactly the same. So one topic which is mentioned in the syllabus is regional synthesis. इसको कर लेते हैं, इसमें ज़्यादा टाइम नहीं लगेगा, because we have already talked a lot about this regional synthesis. So tell me, if I am talking about regional synthesis, first my question is, why talk about synthesis? Why talk about synthesis? What is the need for synthesis? Why we need synthesis? कोई बता सकता है? Simple reason is very good. Simple reason is due to the nature of geography, and we know answer is nature of geography. And geography, if you talk about, is what? Geography is a discipline which is full of binaries. It is full of binaries. Its approach, its subject matter, its methodologies, everywhere in geography you find binaries. And such binaries have led to development of dualism and sometimes even to dichotomies. Sometimes even to dichotomies, and such dichotomies, when they develop, what is the threat of these dichotomies is that they would cause division of the discipline of geography. Discipline of geography would be divided and it would cease to remain geography. The essence of geography is what? Geography is a discipline which provides integration, synthesis. Okay? So that is why we need to understand. That is why we need that synthesis in geography. In fact, we have to understand that geography is a discipline geography is a integrative discipline or integrative science which tries to integrate phenomena, interrelate phenomena, and two phenomena is different, human and physical phenomena, and through that it wants to do what? It wants to ultimately understand the reality as it exists. Understand the reality as it exists. So this is what? This is the core of geography. And if geography is split into branches like physical geography, human geography, tell me, can we say that it would cease to remain geography? Yes or no? It would cease to remain geography, it would no more remain geography. Thus, what we require? We require synthesis among prevailing dualisms and dichotomies in geography, so that the status of geography remain as a unified discipline, a single discipline which can achieve this core objective of understanding the reality as it exists. Okay? So can you understand the reason of so much talk of synthesis? And in this context, it has been so many times it has been opined by the geographers that the best approach in geography which is in a position to provide this synthesis is what? It is regional approach. And from here comes the concept of regional synthesis. समझ में आ गया? Yes or no? Tell me fast. So if you talk about regional synthesis literally speaking is basically what? It is the method of regional geography or regional approach or areal differentiation approach. The method of regional synthesis involves integration of recognized elements of region in such a manner that a whole is created through this integration and has unique characteristic and can be aerially differentiated from its surrounding. Thus, through regional synthesis, ultimate objective of areal differentiation can be achieved. So, regional synthesis is what? The method through which we are integrating the phenomena. We are understanding the reality as it exists. That is what is regional synthesis. So, why it has been called as regional synthesis? Because this method of the regional approach, what it does, it provides opportunity to achieve synthesis in geography. So, proponents of regional approach assert that regional geography and regional synthesis should be the focus of geographical studies. Regional synthesis provides a framework where different approaches prevalent in the discipline of geography can be assimilated. According to Hettner, both systematic and regional geographies are significant for development of science of geography. Thus, study of geography should include and assimilate both. This objective can be achieved in the method of chorology, where analysis of different elements paves the way for understanding of interrelationship between them. Such interrelationship becomes the basis of achieving or recognizing different regions on the surface of the earth. We have already seen how the ideas of Hettner, he talked about both ideographic and nomothetic. देखा है हमने. Geography since ancient times has been characterized by presence of dualistic and dichotomous tendencies. This has led to divergence of opinion on various issues in geography, ultimately causing emergence of various approaches within the discipline. This diversity is so much that there is difference of opinion among scholars about what constitute the core focal point of geography. Kant, while attempting his classification of sciences, has characterized geography as an exceptional discipline. As geography had no clear-cut subject matter and its recognition as a discipline had to be based upon spatial approach. This aspect has now been generally agreed by all geographers that study of space forms the uniqueness of the discipline of geography. Regional geography and regional synthesis have focal point of geographical space. Thus, it has been asserted that thus regional geography should be the focal point of geographical studies, where regional synthesis would provide the framework where various geographical approaches can converge. ठीक है, यहाँ पर वो फेनमैन वाला डायग्राम बताया था, वो एनसीईआरटी वाला डायग्राम आई हैड जस्ट गिवन. ये एक्चुअली मैं यहाँ पर नहीं था, इट वॉज स्टूडेंट हु मेड हियर. इट शुड हैव बीन देयर बिफोर द कंसेप्ट ऑफ सिंथेसिस. सो various significant geographers have expressed their views on regional synthesis. Hartshorne, in his book Perspectives on Nature of Geography, has asserted that we should not confuse regional concept and regional method with what is commonly called regional geography. This again we have talked about, that he very clearly described the regional approach and regional geography to be different. So, regional method uses every facet of geographical inquiry along the continuum from that of studying the most elementary integration to that of studying maximum integration, that is regional geography. Thus, regional method is an area where synthesis of all major prevalent approaches can be achieved. ठीक है. सो एक डायग्राम यहाँ पे बनाते हैं हार्टशॉन का. So you can understand here, we can call one as physical geography, other is human geography. And physical geography has features like geomorphology, climatology, oceanography, biogeography. Similarly, human geography has population and settlement geography, economic geography, political geography, cultural geography, and all of these are what? Systematic branches. So here these are systematic geography. All these systematic geography converges where? Converges at here, and this is the regional approach. This is basically the regional approach. So when you combine all the existing knowledge, so many approaches together, then becomes the regional approach. Okay? So that is the significance of regional synthesis or the regional approach. It leads to that synthesis. So यहाँ से एक पैराग्राफ चेंज होना चाहिए था एक्चुअली में. According to Brian Berry, geographer is always inclined to assume spatial perspective in his analysis. Similarly, according to Edward Ullman, space, particularly the concept of site and situation, assume paramount importance in the discipline of geography. The spatial perspective is correct geographical perspective around which geographical synthesis can be achieved. So Brian Berry in 1964 in Annals of Association of American Geographers has endeavored to explain regional synthesis by using a geographical matrix. The geographical matrix of Berry is a alteration of the anthropological matrix of Berliner, which was given before, where the columns have been replaced by places. So okay, so can you see that this is basically the geographical matrix of Berry, and in this geographical matrix, this is essentially the full form of this geographical matrix. If you see, okay, so can you see here, he has tried to show that how regional method is actually a synthetic method, how it is regional synthesis. So can you see on this side there is the present characteristics of the geographical characteristics, and here characteristics means what? Geographical characteristics. And here you see there is human characteristics, physical characteristics. ठीक है, so इसमें settlement, resource, so many of them can be there. And here is physical characteristics, so many of them. ठीक है, so geomorphological, climatological, biotic, several characteristics can be there. Now if I just study if I take one element and I study this one element for all areas of the world, Which approach this would be? Which approach it would be? Tell me. It would become systematic approach. It would essentially become systematic approach. In fact, we have seen in systematic approach, did we study in systematic approach the climatic regions given by Köppen? Did we study? Yes or no? Thornthwaite, Trivartha, सबका पढ़ा था हमने. So here see, columns are essentially what? Columns are places, regions, which can be further subdivided, region 1, sub-region, place, while rows represent one geographical element in this matrix. Okay? So when you are studying a row, you are essentially studying what? Systematic geography. And this systematic geography can be studied at variety of levels. Can you see here in this diagram of Hartshorne, regional approach is reached here, but can I say here there can be various stages of integration? Yes or no? Here there is some integration, but not complete integration. I can try to integrate these or these with each other. I can talk about how topography is influenced by climate or how climate is influenced by topography. Again, it is what? Interrelation. Again, it is systematic approach. So, even within systematic approach, there can be many levels of integration. So, when you are studying rows, particularly you are performing systematic geography. And when you also include the areal concept in the rows, tell me, does it becomes, याद है विटलसे ने one type of region की बात की थी which was single criteria region? Yes or no? Single criteria region. So, climatic region of Köppen, climatic region of Trivartha or Thornthwaite, aren't they also talking about single criteria regions? They are talking about. And when you study these regions, you find common things. You can come to general conclusions. Okay? So, that is systematic geography. If I study here rows, any of these rows, it is systematic geography. But if I study columns, in this, if I study columns, can I say understanding of these columns is basically what? It is regional geography. And this regional geography I can do at variety of levels. I can do regional geography here, I can do here, I can do here, or I can do here. At this point, full integration of everything. Okay? So again, you can understand that becomes your regional geography. So we know that among the major approaches, spatial approach, region, it is represented in this regional synthesis or in this geographical matrix. Systematic approach is represented physical human geography. Can you find them? Physical geography is there, human geography is there. Also, one important aspect of geography has been time. You cannot separate phenomena, space from time. So tell me, can we say that here this information that we are collecting about an area is present information? But can I go back and collect same information, the same chart with respect to different time periods? Can you see that? Yes or no? With respect to different time periods. And if I am doing, again I can assimilate the temporal approach here, historical approach as well. Okay? So, Berry provides a framework in the form of geographical matrix where he basically does what? Where he ultimately tries to show that how the regional method is actually a synthesis method. ठीक है, synthesis method. ये actually it is 500 booklet है, it is not the optional one, so it is a totally different material to which you have been given. ठीक है, so this is the basic crux of regional synthesis. Have you understood what is the meaning of the term regional synthesis and why it is so much of significant to geography? This is why it is so much of significant to geography. So one question has been asked in the past and I'll give you as a homework. Tomorrow we'll discuss this question. Regional synthesis forms the crux of geographical studies. Comment. Comment. I think it was 150 words और 15 मार्कर था. देख लेना एग्जाम previous year papers में. Just check whether it was 150 words or 15 marker and accordingly you write. ठीक है, tomorrow first thing we'll discuss. We'll start with this question and then we'll move on to, it was 20 marker. Okay, 20 marker was a short note. कौन सा year कौन सा था राधा? Tell me. What was the year? (2015). So it was asked as a 20 marker. Okay, that means long question. ठीक है, so you attempt this question and we'll talk about this tomorrow, how to write this question. No, it is not there in the booklet which has been given to you or guidance के students को भी नहीं दिया गया. They have not been given. It is a different program which I run, 500 plus, you know. It is from that. Okay, so I'll stop for today. Good night to all of you and we'll again meet tomorrow. So okay, it was elaborate. ठीक है, comment नहीं था, it was elaborate. I'll correct that. It was elaborate. Okay, so tomorrow we'll be studying quantitative revolution. Very important topic, but very interesting topic as well. I'll stop for today. Good night. Take care.